Hey everybody, welcome back to Arts and Culture. My name is Catrice Roots, and today I am here with Thomi Hairston, aka Fat Thomi.
Yes, that's correct. How you doing, Catrice? Hello, world.
And get started, I just want to know what ignited your love for hip hop, the music industry, and ultimately what inspired you to want to become a music promoter?
So I grew up hip hop. I consider myself first generation hip hop. It started, I guess, basically the first record was released in 1979. I would have been 14 at that time. So I remember how the record changed the trajectory of music and radio, because prior to that you would have heard there was no such thing as this thing we call rap. So now it moves and you grow up with a gang of adults, your seniors, telling you that it's a fad, it's going to go away. So that carries you all the way through the 80s. So by 1990 they're saying like it's a real thing. Prior to 1990, parents didn't even consider it a real job. Like when I used to say I wanted to be in the music business, there was like, it's not a real job. They go out and become a brick mason, go out, become a doctor, or a lawyer, or Indian chief. So,
Yeah, and so with that being said, how did you just defeat the odds of just that kind of rhetoric during that time? Because I've heard a lot of actors say that too when they wanted to get into acting, like it's not a real job. Just did that inspire you more?
well, what really set it off is the fact that I moved to Atlanta to go to Art Institute of Atlanta. When I got to the Art Institute of Atlanta, I thought I was going to be in television. I wanted to be the next Arsenio Hall. I carried a camera every day. I love film and love photography. But when I got to the Art Institute, everything they were trying to teach me, I had already learned in the Air Force. So I had spent the money, but the classes were doing me no good. So I switched from the film to audio visual to recording. So I started this audio track, learning to record albums, mix, and the president of Ichiban Records came and spoke and told us all about record promoting, how it was done, and I was instantly fascinated because really my job was exactly what I did as a kid. I'm from Connecticut and I moved to Richmond. So all during my middle school and high school years, I'm back and forth to Connecticut and I'm bringing music down because back then there was more choices of music in New York and Connecticut than it was in the South, and there were two different sounds. Richmond radio sounded very different from DC radio, sounded very different from Baltimore radio, sounded very different from Philadelphia radio, sounded very different from New York radio. So we would get hip hop records especially long before Virginia would get them. So I would often bring records down south that no one had ever heard. So I was always bringing, even in high school, I was bringing records that people never heard of, and that ultimately became my job.
Segueing into that, with this ultimately becoming your job, who are some well-known artists, and also what are some well-known record labels you worked for throughout the years?
So artists I promoted, the records I promoted, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, KRS-One, Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang Clan, Biggie Smalls, Craig Mack, TLC, Usher Raymond, DJ Cool, Chino XL, D'Angelo, Jill Scott. I went to work in Hollywood, Burbank, for Rick Rubin. I worked Chino XL, and then the DJ Cool Let Me Clear My Throat record.
Oh,
From there, I went to work at Warner Brothers in Hollywood, Burbank. I worked My Love Is the by Something for the People. I worked Tamia's album. Shaquille O'Neal had an album out at that time. I worked Shaq's album. Eric Benet. I worked Eric Benet's first album. And that pretty much, we had a group, Not Enough, that was not enough. So you don't know them. Yeah. And from there, I went to Arista. So at Arista, I worked basically for Clive Davis. Um, and we had Biggie, Craig Mack, all the Outkast, TLC, Usher, Tony Braxton. We had Dallas Austin, Rowdy Records, Monica. I forgot. I worked Monica. Don't take it personal. And that's close to everything.
That is
It's
awesome.
99 of them in total. It's 99 records that I worked went platinum or gold. So I can't sit here and spout all 99 of them. But
Yeah. And so with these records, like your main job was just to promote them, or did you do anything like behind like in the studio producing?
so I started promoting artists. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and when LA came and started LaFace Records, at the same time Dallas Austin was starting Rowdy Records, and Jermaine Dupri was the hot kid on the block. He had Crisscross. We were doing hot parties. I ran one of the I did the promotions at one of the biggest hip hop clubs in Atlanta, the Phoenix nightclub. It's historic now. Promotion, I just got into promotion because I guess one of the first things we promoted, me and my partner Greg Britt, Greg was good friends with the two guys who did the Freaknik. So Freaknik 1 and 2, I was on the promotion squad to promote that. From that, we started promoting, Greg was friends with the owner of the Phoenix nightclub. And so it was at the time a gay club, and we wanted to do a hip hop night. So my partner Greg talked to the owner, bet the owner that we could make more money than he makes on his gay night. And so he gave us a Friday, and we ended up getting a deal that got us the Jack the Rapper party. So Jack the Rapper was a big convention in time, and we ended up getting the MCA party, which featured Mary J. Blige, Heavy D, and Kid Capri. That was Mary J. Blige's first performance outside of New York. It was at the Phoenix nightclub. She had Heavy D, and the DJ Kid Capri was there. So that started my love for promotions. A lot of things transpired. I had to leave Atlanta. I came back to Virginia. A friend of mine was the general manager, Lisa, went to high school with me, was the general manager at the Jefferson Hotel. She told me that all the record execs stayed at her hotel. She invited me to a wedding and introduced me to a man by the name of Ed Klonick, who was at BMG. Ed gave me an internship, taught me all about marketing. So it's two aspects of the music business when you're dealing with a record. Marketing is everything that deals with the stores and retail. Promotion is everything that deals with radio. So when you are promoting a record, you have to get it played on radio from a promotion side, get it played in the nightclubs, or on the marketing side, get radio commercials like we had Willie's Records. So Willie's would run commercials saying next week Biggie drops, or get Biggie for $9.99. All of that is paid for by the label because their advertisement that comes out of a marketing budget. The promotions budget is basically what you do to get DJs and program directors to play your record.
And kind of going back a little bit, talking about promotion with records and stuff. D'Angelo, he recently passed. Rest in peace to him.
R.I.P.D.
What was your experience like helping him promote his Brown Sugar project?
So I knew D'Angelo's brother Rodney. At that time, I was dealing with all the record stores. Artie at the Phono booth, Willie's Records, Lou at Willie's Records. He was the owner. Mr. Carrington had Carrington's Music on Broad Street. I don't think his name was Mr. Churchill, but that's what I called him. He was the owner of Churchill Records. So back then, those were considered to be mom and pops, all but Willie's. So basically a mom and pop store, from my experience, is most of the black-owned independent record stores. Lou owned Willie's, and the difference is Willie's Records would get fronted all their music. So they could order every record that came out, and then they're allowed to return X amount of records. So let's say you order 100 TLC records and only 99 of them sell. He could return the one that didn't sell and get his money back. Whereas if you were a mom and pop and you were independent, you didn't have a deal with the distributor, so you had to go to a one-stop. We have Dean's One Stop. So Dean is a person who has a deal with the record companies. He buys all the records and warehouses them and then sells them to all the independent store owners. So if you were a Carrington's or you were a Mr. Churchill, you would have to buy from Dean's One Stop. If memory serves me correct, Dean's One Stop was selling the records. They would buy them for $4.99. They would sell them for $7.99. Records would then be sold to the public for $9.99 or $12.99. That's how much you paid for a cassette. Lou, when I met Lou, his deal was he was going to put all the mom and pops out of business. His marketing plan was, I'm going to open up where all the number one record stores are, and I'm going to undercut their prices because he could get the records. First of all, he got the records for $4. So they were paying for them for $7. And he used to tell me I could sell them for what they pay for it and drive them all out of business. I'm allowing them to compete by selling them for $9 because they can at least make $2, which is nothing. So also they couldn't return any records. So if you were a mom and pops, you had to be right, because if you bought, say, 100 not enoughs and they didn't sell, you were stuck with 100 not enoughs. But if Willie brought 100, Willie's Records bought 100 not enoughs and they didn't sell, he could return probably up to 80% of them. So that's how the game was kind of tricky. Then they started doing sound scan, which would count how many records you sold, but they put none of the scanners in independent stores. Only Willie. So now it devalued the mom and pop store. So when an artist comes to town, they want to go, the label wants them to go to the stores that count, meaning take them to Willie's, take them to Circuit City. Because Circuit City at one time was the biggest record purchaser in the country. That's why everybody came to Richmond, because Circuit City's headquarters was here, and they were the number one buyer. And they scanned their records. If you go with Carrington's, they had no scanner, and they couldn't order as much product. So the marketing side, which is the distributor, is telling you, you don't even got to go there. You know, there's no sense going there because we want you to focus on Willie's. We want you to focus on Circuit City. We want you to focus on big box people that's buying large quantities. So when D'Angelo came out, D'Angelo's record drops. It's doing really good in the streets. Philadelphia and New York go on the record instantly. Like, he's blowing up in New York, he's blowing up in Philly. Richmond is only playing them in the mix. We had a program director by the name of Aaron Maxwell. Aaron didn't want to play the record, and nobody could get him to play the record. Everybody's saying, like, because Kadar, so D'Angelo was signed to Kadar. Kadar was the head of, I believe, Universal at the time. Kadar was doing everything he could to get the record played. I told them I could get the record played. His brother Rodney called me and said, Tom, you got to get the record played. Help me out. Because we knew each other. I can't remember how I met Rodney, but I was at Carrington's, and Rodney, his brother, used to hang out with me all the time. And he told me about the D'Angelo project. I listened to the record. I loved the record. I went to see Aaron Maxwell, and Aaron's opposition to the record was he was singing about weed. And I said, you play Mary Jane by Rick James? Yes. He said, that too is a record about weed. And he acted as if he didn't know that. And I was like, whoa. He may not have known. He was like a Jehovah's Witness, was very religious, you know. So I convinced him he should play the record. I said, yo, we got an opportunity to break a young man from Richmond. The whole country is looking at you and questioning why you aren't playing the record. Because he asked me, why are you so concerned about me playing the record? I said, he's from Richmond, and we have an opportunity to have a superstar from Richmond, and the only holdup is you. And Aaron played the record. So once Aaron played the record, I had talked to Rodney, his brother, and I said, look, Rodney, I'll work the record, but I want D'Angelo's first show at home. And so then when I broke the record, it took off. It came time for the first show. And Rodney called me up and said, Tommy, I got some bad news, really. I talked to D'Angelo. He wants to keep it in the family. He'd like the family to be the promoter. He has a cousin that's trying to get into promotions. I said, okay, no problem. You know, anything I can do, just let me know. So they did the show. It was at the Landmark. I was in Hollywood. I get a call from Rodney, and he tells me, it's great, everything is good, but we need an opening act. You know, tickets aren't moving as fast as we would. We really like Outkast. What he actually said is, D really want Outkast. And so I called Blue, cut a deal, and got Outkast to open for D'Angelo, and the rest is history. The show blew up. It was the greatest thing ever.
Man, and is there any like video footage, just do you think, out there of that concert somewhere? Or?
I doubt it because we didn't have video. You're talking about 1992. If you walked around with a video camera, it would have been about the size of a briefcase.
True.
You know, you're talking about and back then people weren't allowing you to come in. Like you couldn't get into the landmark. The only person that would have a video would be if one of the news stations covered it, or the only person in town that might have it is Caramel Video Jams. And I can't remember if he was actually in existence then, but he's the only person I know that always is at all of the concerts with cameras. And you know, back then you talking about he would show up with a giant camera. You had to have a light. You imagine that D is doing a show and you trying to turn a light on. So, but there isn't footage of the Outkast show, but he recorded the video for, oh man, what's the song? The video, D'Angelo, that you're in at the Landmark. Send It On. He recorded that video here. So if you see that video was recorded at the Landmark Theater, and parts of it was at the Old Westover Theater.
Wow.
So there is footage of his, I guess that would be his first tour, because when he first came here, it wasn't a tour. It was him coming home. But his first tour for the, I want to say that was for Brown Sugar, and he had Dead Prez open. Dead Prez open for D'Angelo. That's when I knew D'Angelo was really, really dope. Like he had Dead Prez open for him.
This is like awesome, just hearing the behind the scenes of everything, of how it, all unfolded. And, with that being said, like once Brown Sugar blew up and stuff, what was you guys, just everybody that worked on the project, how did y'all celebrate? What was the feeling like?
Here's the real thing, not how we felt. If you go back and really think about it, before D'Angelo, everybody like the top records would have been Brandy, Monica, Janet Jackson, Teddy Riley. These were like pop R&B. Like R&B was like really, really going down this pop lane where it was moving more to the middle, and it was all about, I don't want to call it manufactured hits, but it wasn't as pure. When D'Angelo dropped, first I consider him a child of hip hop. So he came with the braids. There was no R&B dude wearing cornrows. Okay, D'Angelo. So Virginia could take premise for what it gave back to hip hop and how it helped to blow hip hop up, because the same thing happened with Allen Iverson. There was nobody wearing braids and tattoos in the NBA before Allen Iverson, Virginia's own. There was nobody in the whole music business that considered themselves an R&B singer that dressed like D'Angelo. So he changed the game, one, in how he dressed. He changed the game in his association with hip hop, but then the music, the soulful sound that he created, changed the trajectory of R&B music forever. Like we really went back to soul music. For me, D'Angelo is one of the greatest talents that the world has ever seen. And the reason I say that is because when D dropped, so second album, they had him with no shirt on, trying to make him a sex symbol. And I remember talking to Rodney, and he said D'Angelo hated that. He said that wasn't it. He wanted to sing. And then he stayed true to that. Like, he could have been he could have sold millions and millions of more records had he agreed to fall in line with what the record company asked him to do. The pride that I have for him is because he told them no. He said, this is the sound I want to do. And then he stayed true to that. Now, I would say in the amount of records he sold, he ended up paying the price for that. But for me, in what he gave the world, it far exceeds it shows me, one, that the record and the music industry never knows what's really dope. They never know what's really hot, and they exploit us to the level of they don't know what us they should exploit. Because if you were going to exploit somebody, you should have just got behind him, and whatever he delivered to you, you should have just pushed it out there and said, no matter what he, because it's like Prince. Like, I'm sure when I Want to Be Your Lover came, that was a totally different sound. And then Prince started going all the way out there, and the label just constantly supported him. We came up at a time when D'Angelo changed all of R&B music, gave it a soul feel, and yes, some people did it, came behind him. You got the Jill Scotts, the Vivian Greens, all of them came behind him, but they never really pushed it in America. Like overseas, they tell me that he did wonderful, and he stayed in Europe. But in America, we had a chance to really put out quality sounding music instead of what I consider to be bubblegum music. And D'Angelo is who we owe for that. D'Angelo stayed true to himself. So the thing that I take most from him is he didn't allow the industry to change him. So he stayed true to his sound and his music.
Yes, definitely. I was just talking to a family member about this literally on the phone earlier today about how D'Angelo and many others, like when they say no to the industry, at least like you said, they stay true to themselves and they can put out music whenever they want to. They're not forced to put out music or any particular sounding music that their label wants them to put out. They can put out what they actually feel.
Well, if we had TikTok and YouTube in 1992, I think it would have been less people going into the industry. We would have had a way better quality of music, because if D'Angelo didn't have to sign to a label and we had another medium, then there is no ceiling to what the music he would have produced. I mean, it would have just been, and then we could have found it. We could have followed him and then found all his music.
Definitely. The people, like if TikTok existed back then, the people would have pushed them. Because that's what's
Yes,
happening with my generation. Like all of us were pushing a lot of artists.
well, the people is really what pushed him, because I would dare to say that they didn't give him the budget he deserved. So the people, his support came from the people buying the music, the people waiting for his next album. When Voodoo came out, we waited for it. It's all you had to do was hear that it was out. You ain't have to hear it on the radio. D'Angelo got a new record, you rush to the store and buy it. Like that's really my generation. We had to go in the record store, and first we had to pick music, especially hip hop. The early days of hip hop, you looked for a Sugar Hill Records label, or you just had to look at a cover and determine whether this was going to be a good song or not. Now, some stores like Peaches would play a record. They would have one open and you could listen to it and decide if you wanted it. But most often, you just had to look at the cover, look at the artist, and read the credits and decide whether you're going to purchase a record or not.
And speaking of D'Angelo, I see you bought a plaque in here.
Yes.
If you would like to show that to the audience.
Could you hand me that? Oh my goodness. So,
Wow.
it's D'Angelo. It's the brown sugar plaque. I have I'm not gonna say I have a bunch of them, but that's one that is. Despite the fact that I never sat and had private audience with D'Angelo, like every day, like we didn't sit around and talk. Again, I talked to his brother more than him, and I can't even remember who his regional rep was, but the label more than I talked to him. But because he's from Richmond, and I consider myself from Richmond, it was a certain amount of love and respect. And then the fact that not only is he from Richmond, but again, he changed how we see music. And then, I mean, it's just amazing how art affects the world. And he is definitely was and is one of the greats, the greatest that ever did it to this day.
Definitely. And another thing in memory of him, but I know this was before he passed away, though. You said you have a course on like called D'Angelo.
No.
Oh,
I teach the history of hip hop.
okay.
And then I teach a lyrics course. In my lyrics course, I teach D'Angelo.
Okay.
I play D'Angelo, the Brown Sugar album, SDM.
Okay. I know what you're talking about.
SDMF. I play
Yeah.
that in class. We discuss the lyrics because it really is a hip hop edge, just the way he delivered the song, the beats, the bass lines, and then his look. Because hip hop is so it's a genre, yes, but it's a culture. So a lot of people fit into the culture that don't necessarily make music. Again, you have Allen Iverson, you have Michael Vick. Today, you would have Shador Sanders. He would certainly be hip hop. You know, and so these because hip hop, it's a level of confidence, it's a level of going against the system. So hip hop was a rebellious art form that allowed us when everybody else was wearing Calvin Kleins, we decided we would wear Levi's. You know, the art said we're not going to be into this name brand. We're going to go this way. When everyone else in the world started Jordan drop, everybody ran the Jordans. We wore Adidas. So it was more than just music. It was a culture, the way you talk down by law. You know, it was a whole language that was incorporated in it and a lifestyle. We lived it and the main thing of the lifestyle, to me, the main thing of the culture of hip hop is having the confidence to be true to yourself. That's really all, not all, but the biggest takeaway from hip hop is that you gotta remain true to yourself. And that's why I say he is hip hop, because throughout it all, the money, everything, you know, you ain't got to give me this, you don't have to give me that. I'm good. I'm gonna remain true to me, and that's where he exudes the hip hop culture, in his dress, in his language, and I'm sure, if I remember correctly, his brother told me he could dance, but he just didn't want to. Like, he was very capable of doing all the dances and everything, but that's not the style that he wanted. He wanted to be a soul singer. He wanted to be soulful and touch people. Like, when you listen to it, it touches you. It's not like, I don't want to call it bubblegum pop R&B, but bubblegum pop R&B is totally different from what he did. It's light years apart.
Yeah, it's like that generic sound
Yeah.
versus like soul and something that I've always felt like D'Angelo's music to me felt like home, especially with him being from Virginia. It's like the sound of Virginia to me, you know? So it's like you have soul and something that feels like home, and then just that generic, generalized sound that they push so much, you know?
I think it would have been easy for him to make a Tevin Campbell, Eric Benet type record.
Yes.
But that's not what he wanted to do. Like, he wrote the lyrics. I mean, just look. That's why I teach it. The lyrics. If you just read the lyrics in his music and understand even the clever way he put together Brown Sugar. You know, yes, he's talking about weed, but you really have to listen and pay attention to that and understand the metaphors and symbolism that he's using.
Yes, because it's definitely double entendres in that song, you know? Man. And also, speaking of your course, like what inspired you to, like, after all these years of working in the music industry and all your experience, what inspired you to teach that course at VCU?
So, having worked in the music industry, I saw a lot of people who got jobs out of college and a lot of artists who did stuff. And I said to myself, wow, they're coming out of college and really not prepared for what the music industry is all about. So I wrote a curriculum for Virginia State University. I wanted you to be able to get a degree in the music business, with a concentration either on contracts. So these were all about jobs that you have outside of being an artist. So the curriculum was designed to get you in entertainment. So you could not necessarily work in music, you could work in the NBA, you could work in the NFL, because at the end of the day, it's all entertainment. Doesn't matter if you go to wrestling, you go to WWE, it's still marketing and promotion. And you get out of college and you don't have that complete understanding because the courses aren't really talking to you about that. So I wrote the curriculum. Virginia State, for whatever reason, didn't want it. So one day I woke up and said, I'm gonna send it to all the colleges in Virginia. VCU, U of R, and UVA got back in contact with me. U of R said, great course, not for us. UVA had just hired a brother. He has, they call him the hip hop he has a doctorate in music, and he's like Doctor Hip Hop or something at UVA. And VCU said, "Yo, this is great. Let's have a meeting." So we met. They loved the idea, and it's 9 semesters, 10 semesters later. I'm there. We're growing. We're adding classes. Shout out to VCU School of the Arts. It's a wonderful university with wonderful people who saw my vision and is trying to help me arm the next generation of musicians.
Awesome. And speaking of the next generation of musicians, what are your words for of wisdom for the youth, musicians, people that want to get into the industry, or just anybody in general?
You know, when you asked me that question, I had to take a minute and think. And I think the real thing that you can tell an artist is really to stay true to themselves. That's really the catch, is to make great music. Like, I remember seeing Prince, and then I saw the movie Purple Rain, and the promoter comes out and says, "You're making music for yourself. Nobody's with you." So that to me is what an artist does. Like, an artist doesn't go in and say, like, if you're at a record label, right, and Biggie is hot, right? So the A&R director comes from Warner Brothers and says, "Hey, Biggie is hot. We need a Biggie," you know. But I say, we already have a Biggie. He's just at the other label. So to me, I don't want, if I were A&R director, I don't want anybody that sounds like anything. Like, I'm looking for the next new thing. Like, when you take D'Angelo and you listen, at the time that he came out, nothing sounded like him. If you take the Wu-Tang Clan, at the time they came out, nothing sounds like them. If you take Outkast, I saw Thug, or heard Thug say, Andre 3000 didn't put nobody on. I would argue that Outkast put the whole South on. Nobody was, look, before Outkast, the South was country. After Outkast, the South became Southern. D'Angelo got a lot of flack because, or he got more love from New York than he did Richmond, because the North is more progressive, and New York isn't looking for the next TLC, the next Biggie. They're looking for the next thing. So D'Angelo, by not fitting the mold of what was currently out, he was the next thing. So, you know, in bigger markets, they want that. They don't want the record that they go and go, "Oh, that sounds just like Doechii to me. Oh, that sounds like Chris Brown to me." No, they want something that says, "Wow, look at this." So when they put it on their station, it sounds nothing like anything you've heard, and you can only get it here. So now you're rushing over there to find out what this is. So my advice to everyone would be, stay true to yourself, and that music comes from within and not from outside in. It comes from inside out.
Definitely. And also, how can people find you on social media or online anywhere?
Fat Thomi, Fatthomi. I think if you just put that in, I think that's Instagram, and of course I'm never on there. I'm like 60 years old, but I am on If you put in Fatthomi, you can find me. X Records, you can find me YouTube page, because we did X Records. You know, we put out, when I left the label, we put out music. Little Nicky, Antonique, who else from Richmond? Prince Charles. So we put out some records independently to try to do something and change the trajectory of Richmond.
I want to say thank you for promoting Antonique, because I grew up listening to that album. My dad would play that album
Oh,
around me.
wow.
So, yeah, I think that is
So
awesome.
that record is kind of special because that was inspired by D'Angelo. D'Angelo, I was trying to create a female. Okay, so here I just said that you don't want to make anything like anything, but I was trying to create a female D'Angelo, something that had a soulful sound with a hip hop feel. And so half the album was produced by Nate Smith, who graduated from VCU. Shout out to Nate. The other half, I can't remember the brothers in Philly that did the other half of the album, man. But the whole album was recorded in Philadelphia. X Records produced the entire album, paid for it, marketed and promoted it. So that album I really love because I A&R'd it. Like, I picked the songs. I was instrumental in the studios we used You know, we recorded it in Philly. We were next door to the Roots. The Roots was on one side of the hall. Vivian Green's drummer, that's who was the drummer on the other half of the album. So the first half of the album was produced, written, and composed by Nate Smith. He actually, every instrument he played, every instrument. He played the drums. I remember in the studio watching him. First he laid down the drums, then he laid down the keyboard and the horn parts. He went in there and actually got the keyboard and wrote out the horn parts because he had some horn players from Virginia. They said, "What are you going to do? Play it and just let us fill in?" And he said, "No, I wrote it all out." So I sat and watched him on the piano write out the horn parts. And so they played the horn parts. So that I would say I learned the absolute most about music watching Nate Smith put that album together. Like that was my master class in how to make an album. Like he, from start to finish, and I had been in the studio a long time. I've been in studios with Organized Noise and all of them, but watching Nate do it and watching him play each instrument and then watching him sit with the engineer and saying, because when it came time to mix the album, he was like, "No, turn that up, bring that down." And I was like, whoa. So that was the best master class I ever took. So I consider that album to be my college degree because it costs more than most colleges. We spent way more than it cost to go to VCU. The string arrangements alone on the intro was $50,000. We had Larry Gold. So Larry Gold is from the Philly International Sound. He did our string arrangements and he brought in, we had violins come in, like, it was the greatest thing ever. So that was my doctorate in the music business because I had already promoted, I had already done marketing. What I hadn't done was actually made an album.
I didn't know it cost that much to invest in an album, though. I'm gonna be so honest.
Yeah, I had wonderful people. My man, Lil Lee, helped to finance the project. My man, James Roots, negotiated a deal that got me the money to put the project together. And they were by my side as I promoted the whole project. Earl and Kaz and Antonique, all of them, we were like a really tight-knit crew. We went all up and down the East Coast, Miami, the whole nine, promoting it. And then I went out to Malaco, met with the owner, Thomi Couch, who saw my vision and gave us a distribution deal. So we were one of the first people to get a full-fledged distribution deal out of Virginia. You know, we had a complete marketing distribution deal from Malaco. That's where X Records released Antonique and Little Nicky. Little Nicky right from Southside, George Biff. Little Nicky.
I was about to say, you just jogged my memory. I used to listen to her album as well. Like my dad, he had all them albums. So.
Well, shout out to him supporting X Records. We appreciate all the X Records love.
I'm gonna have to go back home, just go through all the CD archives, and like just pull them out, listen to them again. Oh my goodness. Music was great though. Awesome.
Well, I'm glad I inspired someone.